I still remember everything you said. Phil Collins, a national treasure. I'm T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live. I cover every single major fight live. James DeGALE, the IBF 168-pound champion of the world, is going to be taking on former IBF 168-pound champion of the world, Bute, November the 28th, 2015, looking like it's going to be on Showtime, not PBC. If you don't know, James DeGALE, James Chunky DeGALE, has been recently signed by, thank you, Al Heyman, and he's also a Matchroom Eddie Hearn fighter. Matchroom most notably promotes fighters like IBF 147-pound champion Kell Brook and the future heavyweight world champion of the world, Anthony AJ Joshua. I am T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live with RealCombatMedia.com, and I cover every single major fight live. Please subscribe. The fight is said to be taking place up in Canada, and frankly, I got James DeGALE. Now, don't get me wrong, Bute is good, but to me, he just hasn't been the same since he's been... You should know what that means. He's been Cobra'd. He hasn't been the same. Bute can box, you know, has a very good amateur background. If you haven't seen, you should go check out that amateur fight between him and Gennady Golovkin. If you're a smart man, you know how that goes. James DeGALE's had a little bit of a hiccup in the past with George Groves. I don't think he would have any issues beating George Groves today. It's just that was a fight that was very close in my opinion. You know, depending on which day you watch it, depending on what kind of referee, depending on what kind of judge you are, you know, may determine who you thought won that fight. So, where does James DeGALE go if he wins against Bute? Or where does Bute go? The 168-pound division is very, very deep. You got a big fight between Caleb Smith and Rocky Felding coming up in the UK. The winner of that is supposed to be Batu Jack's mandatory. Batu Jack just beat George Groves. And then you have Andre Ward, who's the WBA champion, who hasn't fought at 168 pounds since like 2013. Something crazy. Was it 2014? 2013? 2013, I believe. Either way, it's just a super long time since he's fought and defended that WBA Super World title at 168 pounds. But it's something I got to point out in every video that I do when I talk about that WBA 168-pound champion, Andre Ward. They strip Carl Froch, right? But then they don't strip nobody else. They strip Carl Froch, and I guess maybe because he knocked out George Groves at Wembley in front of 80,000, but they strip nobody else. It never made any sense to me. And then Andre Ward, who was inactive, they still allowed him to keep his title. But anyway, so the 168-pound division, once again, even though I got sidetracked, you got James DeGALE, who's fighting Bute. He's the IBF champion. You got Batu Jack, who just defeated George Groves. He's the WBC champion. You got Arthur Abraham, who's the WBO champion, coming off of fights with Stieglitz. A big fight, big global international fight with Stieglitz, a 4-fight. And also those 2 wins over Paul Smith, even though I felt Paul Smith should have won the first fight, or it should have been a draw, if anything. And then who else? Who else? So we got the WBO Arthur Abraham, we got the IBF James DeGALE, WBC Batu Jack, and I feel like I'm missing a belt. Oh, then Andre Ward, you can't really count him. But when you look at potential fights for James DeGALE, for example, you got a potential fight with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. You got the George Groves rematch. You got the Rocky Felding, Caleb Smith winner in a big international fight. You got the brothers Dirrell, who was a rematch with Andre Dirrell, which it could be because the fight was basically outside of the knockdown, which he hit the shit out of him, was a pretty close and competitive fight, especially as the fight went on later on. You got Anthony Dirrell, who can avenge his brother. You know, if they want to give him a warm-up fight, you know, a nasty, nasty, nasty PBC-style fight because him fighting Andre Dirrell, then fighting Bute, those are 2 big fights. So if PBC wanted to give him a nasty fight, maybe put him in there against a nasty Rubio or something like that. I'm not saying I don't want to see that fight. I'm not saying they should make that fight. All I'm saying is that there are fights out there for him. And depending on what happens with Chris Eubank Jr., if he's going to be fighting at 168 pounds, he just signed with Matchroom. There's so many big fights out there for James DeGALE or Bute if they wins. And if not, you know, who knows? They can go up maybe 2 pounds, fight at a catch weight of 170 or fight at 175 and test the waters at 175. You know, hell, I could probably even see James DeGALE versus Saki Obika. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised after Andre Dirrell, after beating him, and if he beats Lucien Bute, I wouldn't be surprised to see James DeGALE versus Saki Obika, or James DeGALE versus a Marco, where he already beat Marco Antonio Parabon. IMT Street Controversy, November 28th is the date. This is T Street Controversy Live. Please subscribe at realcombatmedia.com.